Experience Japan through the eyes of a lifelong Godzilla fan. A story of one kid's dreams coming true in 2023. We'll see bits of Japanese culture, some pretty cool places, and end up in Tokyo for the movie event of a lifetime. So please join me on this personal journey coming up next. Welcome to Luis Mesa's YouTube channel. This is an extra special episode about my time in Japan. A mix of my amateur recordings, clips, memories, and anecdotes that I'm excited to share, as I haven't seen anyone make quite a trip like mine. One that was guided by my experience in life growing up, going all the way back to my childhood. So first to start, let me ask you this. When you think back to your first memory, what comes to your mind? Many American children might remember their earliest Christmas morning with their family. Opening their favorite present, or a glimmer of their earliest Disney experience. I myself recall watching Mickey's Christmas Carol as a very early memory. But when I close my eyes and think back as far as I can, instead of Christmas and Mickey Mouse, for me, it's New Year's Day. And what I see and hear is... That's right, it's Godzilla. You see, it was an old American television tradition to show Godzilla movies on New Year's Day.
Run for your lives! The Godzilla Marathon is coming! 7 smash hit movies!
And watching this was my first clear memory.
I can't believe it.
The sights and sounds of these movies lit my young 3-year-old imagination on fire. I was mesmerized by those giant, awe-inspiring monsters. But there was more to my instant fascination with Godzilla. Much more. Those films were a gateway to a past and people from a completely foreign land. And I became enamored with the culture, stories, skylines, and landscapes which, for most of my life, only existed in my mind as part of some faraway place. That is until 2023, when, just months after Japan had lifted its travel restrictions, I finally visited for a 2-week vacation. Tokyo alone took up most of my trip, though for one day I visited a World War II memorial and former POW campsite on the West Coast that I read about in American hero Louis Zamperini's biography. It was my only peaceful day, as back around Tokyo I rushed to as many places as I could, including the Ultraman town, the Gundam in Yokohama, Tokyo Disneyland and Disney Sea, as well as the most notable Godzilla locations. The original Toho Studios, the new studio and sound stages at Godzilla Square, and of course, I stayed at the Godzilla Hotel. As I strolled around the hotel one day, I stumbled into this restaurant cross-promoting another series I love, Evangelion, with a new film from a different Japanese icon. Shin Kamen Rider, which premiered the same weekend I was in Tokyo. As I enjoyed the surroundings, I recognized that Evangelion and Shin Kamen Rider were both from the same filmmaker, Hideaki Anno, who also directed the last Japanese Godzilla film, the 2016 political thriller and Japan's Best Picture winner that year, Shin Godzilla. And then, another thought occurred to me. The next Japanese Godzilla film, set in post-World War II 1940s Japan, had just been announced. So I thought, it's been 7 years since Shin Godzilla. Who knows how many years till the next Japanese one? What if I return to Japan for this movie's opening weekend? Excuses popped up in my head about why I shouldn't because I had other trips planned, other videos to make, classes, my job, and I couldn't possibly find more free time for this. Yet in my heart, I knew Godzilla Minus One was something I had to come back for. So I decided, yes, let's go. My itinerary for that brief trip ended up working out like this. Now, let's relive it. I left the morning of October 31st and arrived the next afternoon. So I skipped Halloween entirely to get these days perfectly over the new movie's opening weekend. I had been thinking that Tokyo Disney Sea could be the perfect place to set the mood for this Godzilla trip. During my first visit, I was enthralled by the mysterious island and the theming from those 50s era sci-fi films. However, with a few hours to check out only one park, I ended up deciding to go to Tokyo Disneyland instead, which was hosting a unique celebration this year and where I had some unfinished business. So that will be our first stop. This would be my only chance to see the 40th anniversary celebration at Tokyo Disneyland, which was already transitioning into Christmas time. As for unfinished business, during my first visit, I had a taste of what is still my favorite snack across all of the Disney parks. The pork rice rolls from their version of Frontierland, which I have been craving ever since my first bite. Also, Tokyo Disneyland has the world's only second castle with a Beauty and the Beast attraction, which I missed the first time because I got there too late and the queue had already closed. So as I walked in, I contemplated my options. Go straight to the Beast's castle and risk missing out on pork rolls, or get my pork rolls first and risk the Beauty and the Beast queue closing, and that's if it wasn't closed already. Then, as I posed for a picture at the castle, the familiar sounding music of Western strings in the distance made my mouth water, my empty stomach began growling, and my choice became clear. Made it to Tokyo Disneyland. And I got the best snack. Those babies are pork, rice. I came all this way just to eat this. Just like I remember it. Now to make a run for Beauty and the Beast. But in my haste, I got lost and went toward the wrong castle. And by the time I turned around and made it, the queue had closed. Just like last time. And as if that weren't enough, the 40th anniversary fireworks show was canceled. For a moment, I was crushed. But with no time to be sad, I realized I now had an opportunity to enjoy Tokyo Disneyland's Tomorrowland, which was scheduled to be closed for 2 years for a futuristic update. So let's take a quick walk through Tokyo Space Mountain one last time. If nothing else from this Tokyo Disneyland trip, we at least got to see classic Tokyo Disneyland Tomorrowland one last time. After my final Tokyo Space Mountain ride, the park had closed and it was time to get some sleep. Because the next morning, I would travel deeper into the heart of Japan for a very different, more sentimental experience. I woke up early to catch the first bus out of Tokyo's Shinjuku station. On a ride about 100 kilometers south of the city. The route took me through parts of the Japanese countryside that allowed me to see Mount Fuji for the very first time. On the way to the hot springs town of Hakone. The setting for the anime series created by Hideaki Anno I mentioned earlier, inspired by a 4-year period he spent in a deep depression. That series was Evangelion, the story of Shinji Ikari and his struggle to find self-worth and connection with others. I felt that the way Shinji's inner turmoil was portrayed captured the essence of my own despair as I went through a heartbreaking time in my life. Seeing such a depressing story set in this beautiful place felt strange, yet almost soothing to my aching heart. And as the story evolved, seeing Shinji break through his struggles and reach for what he loves against all odds is part of what inspired me to live fully again. I came here to connect those emotions I felt with the nature that inspired it all. This first stop, Togendai Station, did not interest me for its tourist attractions. I simply came to feel this fantasy become reality and also to see reality turn into fantasy. Part of this station had transformed into the nerve base from Evangelion to promote the final film in the series back in 2021. I had read about this installation online and I hoped to see it someday, but with the world shut down, I truly thought I'd never get the chance. Now, here I was. And while the facade doesn't lead to any secret headquarters, I did find a romantic lakeside restaurant that I'd have to try another time. For now, I took in these last moments and moved on to the town's main station, Hakone Yumoto, for my final Evangelion pilgrimage site, a visit to the official store. And with that, I began my ascent alongside the creeks and burgeoning autumn leaves, past the street-side food stalls, and along Hakone's famous hot spring inns, to a place on top of a hill where I'd be spending the night. That hilltop destination was a ryokan and onsen, that is, traditional Japanese inn, and an outdoor hot spring. The Pension Okada and Hakone Mori Onsen, where I came to experience an intimate part of Japanese culture. As I checked in and made my way toward my room, I felt some kind of transcendence. It was like entering a place built from my memories of those old Japanese films. Little details like slippers at the door, the types of traditional clothing, the style of sitting around the tables, the patterns of the windows, the sliding doors, the layout of the rooms, it was all surreal, as if that old Japan in my imagination had at long last become my reality. After getting situated, I made my way to the onsen. That first time entering nude into an outdoor public bath was quite a shock at first, but not long after I settled into that steaming hot spring water. My nerves calmed, my mind loosened up, and a sense of reinvigoration and serenity came over me, the likes of which I had never felt before, and that I'll never forget. I relaxed long into the night, then enjoyed a traditional post-bath Japanese feast for dinner, and the soundest sleep I've had in a long time. I went in for another dip before my breakfast buffet, and then I couldn't resist a third and final trip to the onsen, where I re-entered the world of Evangelion one more time, feeling like Shinji in one of his only moments of peace.
This feels like heaven.
And that wraps up my stay in beautiful Hakone, Japan. But I'm getting ahead of myself. November 3rd, Godzilla Day. And this year, also the opening day for Godzilla Minus One. Multiple promotions were going on to celebrate across Japan, including this float driving around Tokyo, depicting one of the scenes from the new movie, and a fan event at Godzilla Square with screenings, multiple movie celebrations, and Godzilla-themed food. Meanwhile, here in Hakone, I had found out about a unique hot springs theme park that had set up a one-of-a-kind Godzilla promotion. I was behind schedule, but finally set out to get there before noon. There was just one minor oversight. I had no idea that Japan celebrates a holiday on November 3rd, Hakone Culture Day, for which Hakone was hosting a series of events and parades. The road closures and tourist influx put me even further behind schedule. Though, if I had to suffer a delay, I suppose this was the nicest way to go. Finally, by mid-afternoon, I arrived at the Unisun Hot Springs theme park. It was like a day at the beach, at the water park, and a spa, all wrapped in one, but high up in the mountains. I recorded a walkthrough you can find on my YouTube channel where I visited each Godzilla attraction. I also couldn't help but enjoy all the unique baths here. There was one infused with coffee, another with red wine, among many others. And as I splashed around throughout the day, in Tokyo, the Godzilla Minus One opening night events started getting underway. While in Hakone, the tourist congested buses were behind schedule, so I decided not to rush to Tokyo for the movie tonight. That would be stressful, and I wanted to stay relaxed. I rescheduled movie night for Saturday, November 4th, and instead, I made a pit stop on my way back to Tokyo, where, at Kawasaki Station, I knew the perfect place to satisfy my monster appetite. Kaiju-Sakaba, which can translate to Monster Bar, a restaurant themed after the monsters from the Ultraman saga. Ultraman, of course, made by one of Godzilla's co-creators, Eiji Tsuburaya. I came for the first time back in March, but when I got there the kitchen had closed. However, the bar was still open and they allowed me to record this little tour. So first, let me show you around. After the store at the front of the restaurant is the first booth area, dedicated to the Ultramen and the SSSP or Science Patrol, with props, replicas, posters, and technical readouts decorating the area. At the other end of the restaurant was a traditional Japanese banquet room, just like ones I'd seen in the movies. The televisions play Ultraman's different monster fights, figures and artwork decorating all over. The second booth area is dedicated to aliens from the Ultraman universe, while the main hallway's booths are themed for the most popular kaiju. They seated me with my favorite, Ultraman's first antagonist, Gamora, where I was served my first sake in Japan. For this November visit, I arrived earlier than last time, but the booths were full, so I was seated at the counter. I chose the signature dish here, Alien Baltan's Hospitality, which is a type of crab fried rice. And like a good American, I chose a second entree after that, something off the special menu. After which, collecting the goodies they gave me, I finally returned to my home base, the Godzilla Hotel, contacting a friend who lives in Tokyo along the way to join me tomorrow for the big day. Back during my trip in March, I had gone to a stand-up show by Japanese comedian Mishida. Mishida was doing a bit when I heard someone in the audience say something peculiar.
Like a dwarf. Fake niceness. Fake niceness. To put it simply, in English, datemae is. Your Japanese is great.
That Spanish-speaking guy is now my good friend Christopher from Argentina. We talked after the show and discovered we both have the same love for Japanese culture and having a good time. So I thought he'd be the perfect person to come with me to watch the movie tonight. But before that, I made one last Godzilla-related stop. At the Godzilla Square's Chandler Mall, there was a display of movie posters from throughout the history of Godzilla films. There was a pop-up Godzilla shop and an exhibition dedicated to the founder of Toho Studios, Kobayashi Ichizo. After taking some pictures and recordings, I returned to the hotel to get ready for the night. Ready all in black, I headed to Hakone, the restaurant at the foot of the Godzilla Hotel Tower, with a killer happy hour, to sip on some wine as I waited for Chris to arrive. After some beers and still with time to kill, I took Chris around the block to a little corner bar that I've always seen poppin', a place with two different names. It's either Bar Aqua or Cafe 88, depending on where you look. Hey, that's a little odd, isn't it so? Well, whatever the case, I'd see this place full of partygoers, even on my 6 a.m. morning runs. I would guess it's popular among people who miss their last train home, since it's open 24 hours a day. Things looked good from the outside, so Chris and I stepped in for a piece of the action. After a taste of the party, the time had come. We walked back as the final countdown to Godzilla Minus One had begun. As we walked, my jovial mood quickly dissipated, as I felt myself almost losing touch with my surroundings, and a stream of emotions and memories began to take hold of me. I remembered a random thought coming to my mind, a lesson from this book, Mastery. In it, author Robert Greene observed that the great achievers he studied from Leonardo da Vinci all the way to Steve Jobs, maintained some form of connection to their deepest childhood inclinations, which was a common thread and key part to their success. I often wondered how this insight applied to me, as I never felt any special attraction to math or art or sports or science. It was a strange thought, but as I considered it, it no longer seemed so random, as I realized that the childhood inclination for me must be tied to the spark of wonder I felt seeing Godzilla and Japan on screen in my earliest years. Then, another childhood memory suddenly followed. The first time my parents took me to Universal Studios Hollywood, at the Things from Another World shop, and the moment I first discovered imported Japanese Godzilla toys. I still remember the shock I felt seeing so many of my favorite monsters who looked like they jumped straight out of the movies. I never forgot that moment of childhood wonderment. I loved that store, and for years it was my favorite place in the whole wide world. Until now. Once again, I stood before the Godzilla Hotel for a moment in disbelief that I, the child whose earliest memory was watching Godzilla movies from Japan so long ago, had made it this far as I continued toward the Toho Cinema's entrance, where I began to reminisce on a later part of my life. The years I worked for Japanese company Bandai Namco, and especially 2019, when I was assigned to manage the Godzilla sales booth at San Diego Comic-Con. That weekend, I got to see props straight out of the old Godzilla movies. I met actors, artists, and I myself became the Godzilla guy to the thousands of fans from around the world who came to my booth. It was the kind of dream experience I never thought I'd have again. Now, here I was in Tokyo, the new movie moments away. I went in as memories of those old films seemed to flash before my eyes. Those monsters that thrilled me every time they appeared on screen. Japan, the country I fell in love with through film, the changes I saw it go through going back 7 decades, and all the fascinating aspects of the culture that from childhood to this day still fuels my passion and curiosity. The stories that helped shape who I am. Stories of courage, determination, self-sacrifice, and tragedy, some which can still bring tears to my eyes. And last, the stories of romance, of ordinary men thrust into extraordinary circumstances and compelled to be heroes for the world and to the women who loved them. And so I wondered, what would this new story bring to my life as I stepped into the IMAX auditorium and sat down? The lights dimmed, the previews rolled, and at long last, the movie, the moment, arrived.